Hello, and welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, a podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Jan Amelie, and today I'll be talking about Series 2, Episode 4, Stasis Leak, with the help of my guest, Feline Ranger. Oh, welcome back.
Hello.
Hello. So here we are with, as we were saying before, a very different kind of episode in tone to the previous one. But I mean, I like it. It's a very good episode, but it's such a contrast when you watch them back to back.
Yeah, it's a real kind of rapid pace, this one, isn't it? There's so much going on, and you've got like a flashback, and then that kind of establishing scene, and then they go out and they're out and about, and then they're down at the hotel, and then there's the big scene at the end with like three of everybody all there yelling at each other. It's really fast paced.
Yeah, there's just so much going on in this episode. I mean, honestly, it's easy to miss stuff. You need to cut. I mean, even leaving aside the whole sort of plot, massive plot holes that you could probably drive a truck through. I mean, even leaving that aside, there's just so much going on that you could miss the first time or even the second time. But okay, let's dive straight into the episode and the opening scene, which I really enjoy. I mean, they look so good in black and white, don't they?
Yeah, I think black and white is flattering for everyone, isn't it? I have a theory about that.
Yeah, I think it probably is, to be honest. It just kind of sort of lends a veneer to everybody, which it's kind of hard to describe. But it's very nice, and of course this is got them travelling back in time. This is an actual flashback, and it's really. I mean, I always enjoy sort of pre-accident flashbacks, and of course in this episode, this is the last time that we see Hollister as a serious sort of captain figure.
Yeah, it all kind of changed in Series 8, didn't it? But
yeah, it did. Yeah, obviously, dramatically, yeah.
But Mac is so good in the role, I think, even in Series 8, that
Yeah, I mean, he does his he does his best with the material he's given. I mean, I guess you could maybe argue if you wanted to that the chicken outfit they put him in here is a precursor of Series 8. But I mean, I'm not sure that's the case because I mean, he is still playing it straight here. So he's not playing it for comedy at all.
No, and I think there is that thing, even that in that initial flashback, that you can kind of see that he's not really taking it as seriously as he should be.
Okay, about the scene where Lister decides he's going to go back to the past and spend that 3 weeks with Kochansky, but before the accident, and it's the this scene is really the only sort of scene in this episode which is like Thanks for the Memory. It's a sort of slower, more quieter scene between just Lister and Rimmer, and the bit where Rimmer says, "What about me? I've given you the best years of my death." That is such a classic, long-suffering sitcom spouse line.
Yeah, isn't it just? And classic Rimmer as well, isn't it? Just if those were the best years of his death, we'd have hated to see the worst, wouldn't we?
Exactly.
He hasn't exactly been a caring spouse, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it is very, very Rimmer to go, what about me? What about me?
What about me? Yeah. And, it is quite sweet in its way. I mean, obviously, we know Rimmer's a human disaster, but he doesn't want Lister to go. And, as we always say, for whatever reason you want that to be, he doesn't want to be left alone. And, he doesn't want Lister to go back. And, he points out if Lister goes, he's only got 3 weeks to live. If Lister goes, he is going to die. Which I think often gets forgotten when sort of talking about this moment.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, well, I mean, I'll get to this when we move on to the sort of continuity nightmare. Of course, there is a fact that if Lister went, he would also be leaving Cat, which isn't actually brought up at all.
Yeah, Rimmer doesn't want to be left holding the baby.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Rimmer, imagine being left with just Cat and Holly for company.
Doesn't bode well, does it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll call some. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is an interesting scene because it's. How do I put this? I mean, I don't. Well, I'm not going to call it queer baiting because it's not queer baiting. I mean, because not in the sense of I don't think anybody who saw this scene, genuinely thought, that Lister and Rimmer were going to get together romantically, or at least not at this stage of the show. But
no.
They do kind of tease it, I mean, where he says, "I'm going to tell you something that will probably stun you rigid." And then the audience, just for a second, think he's going to say, "I'm in love with you," and then, "You're right, I don't like you." The way they tease that is interesting.
It's a little tease, but it's also an acknowledgement, isn't it, that at this point their relationship has changed, and that the feelings Rimmer has for Lister aren't solely negative anymore.
It's true, yeah. And he does also, he sort of qualifies it by adding, "I don't like what you stand for," and that's not the same thing as "I don't like you."
Yeah, that's a very good point. He doesn't like Lister's attitude on life. He doesn't like that he's working class. He doesn't like that he doesn't wash enough. But as he said in the previous episode, he's everything about you is wrong, but somehow it
All
works.
the ingredients are wrong.
Yeah. All the ingredients are wrong.
And then of course we find out that Rimmer sneaked off back into the past while Lister was asleep to try and get in first, and he still makes a complete mess of it.
Yeah. I mean, really, when you stop and think about it, neither of them. You could argue they're both being kind of selfish here because in Rimmer's sense, he's just looking out for himself, isn't he? He wants to not be a hologram, which is kind of understandable. But from Lister's perspective, if he saves Kochanski and, as he says, get her back to now, bring her out and bingo, that's not much of a life to be kind of bringing her back to, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of ambiguous what Lister's thinking. I mean, is he thinking that, "Oh, I'll go back and be with her, and once we've had sex, I'll tell her about the drive plate and prevent the accident." I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's kind of established, isn't it, that the intention is for her to use the stasis booth, or for one of them to use the stasis booth, and it's the trade-off, isn't it? Yes, if I can convince you to go into stasis, you'll survive the accident, but you will wake up and be 3 million years away from Earth with no hope of getting back, with just me and these guys. So.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, I mean, what person in their right mind would voluntarily step into that situation, especially, given at this stage they haven't even dated? I mean, come on.
Yeah. And I guess as well, it's interesting that I was thinking, when they do go back and he realises that actually she's not even on the ship at this point, she's down on Ganymede with future Lister in the honeymoon suite, that does raise the idea that in canon, Kochanski did in fact survive the accident because both Listers did essentially go back and warn her.
I suppose. I mean, I must admit, this.
There's that continuity thread again. Don't pull it.
It gives me a headache. I mean, my head spins. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice to think that well, I guess the best way to think of it is it's an alternate timeline in which future Lister managed to go back and warn her, and she survived the accident because of that, or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Of course.
So it also raises the question, doesn't it? And I suppose it answers its own question, that if Lister is able to go back, get off the ship, get down to Ganymede with Cat, that in a sense he's kind of back, then, and he could just take off and go, right, I'm back on Ganymede, and he could essentially get back to Earth and live in that timeline. The only thing stopping him is the knowledge that if he waits another 5 years, he's going to be able to come back and get the girl. But
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I was thinking about, well, the sort of gaping plot hole in this episode. Why don't Lister and Rimmer just when they find they can go back in time, just go back, warn Hollister about the drive plate and prevent the accident. I think in Lister's case, the justification is supposed to be that his future self tells him to go back where he came from, wait for 5 years. I think the implied thing there is supposed to be that Lister thinks that in 5 years' time he will find out a different way to prevent the accident. So
yeah,
I think that was
that
supposed to
makes
be
more
justification
sense.
in his case, at least.
Yeah. And also, if he just kind of went back and kind of did a runner during, this episode, it would also kind of leave Rimmer stranded as well. And obviously, he wouldn't want to do that. He might think about it, but he wouldn't do it.
Exactly, I mean, I'm getting a flash forward to that scene in Terraform where he says, well, we can either rescue him or we can sit out lemons and watch him get tortured, and he hesitates just for a second and then says, okay, we're going in.
Yeah, there's just that little moment, isn't there? Of like, maybe.
Okay. Right. So when we get to the part where both Lister and Rimmer are have sort of gone back into the past and are sort of running around trying to change things, I do want to briefly talk about the brief scene we get with Peterson, because it's interesting.
Oh, isn't it brilliant? And Mark Williams, obviously, he's a brilliant actor, and he just makes so much of what is really only a few seconds of screen time, but it's so memorable, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. It's interesting the way where we see what a flirt he clearly is.
He's putting on the accent, isn't he, when the ladies are there, and it sort of
Yeah,
rapidly
now
disappears
you mention it, he is
when Lister
kind of
pounces on him.
his Danish accent. Obviously someone has told him it's a turn on, presumably.
Yeah. But yeah, he's just his complete lack of surprise when Lister initially turns up and sort of throws his arms around. He's just like, "Oh, hi."
Oh, hi, and then it's like, no, you don't kiss me on the lips in public when I'm trying to chat women up. I mean, come on.
And yeah, it's funny as well. Just you get that sense of like, not that this isn't the first time it's happened, but the fact that he immediately assumes that Lister's sort of playing this prank, and he's Lister, you die for this. Is the idea that maybe kind of sabotaging each other's flirting opportunities is not uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, thing with Lister and Peterson, I mean, they are very clearly, good friends and sort of drunken mates, But I mean, we have sort of, talked about, well, those of us who sort of write Vic, we have sort of talked about, we think it's entirely possible that while actually drunk, they may have had a few sort of fumbles.
Yeah, it's not ever verified, but considering that we know that Lister can potentially get drunk enough to end up on a different planet, I think it's fair to assume that occasionally he ended up in the wrong bed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really sort of, actively ship it. I mean, it's something I can definitely see happening. I mean, especially since we do later find out that Lister has got a tattoo on his inner thigh which says "I love
I
Peterson."
love Peterson. So, yeah, you want to explain that?
Well, his explanation is Peterson got me so drunk I didn't know what I was doing, and there's just something about the way he puts that.
Yes. So what else did he get you to do?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, seriously. Anyway, yeah.
Maybe we should step away from that. That could get adult very quickly, couldn't it?
It's just kind of interesting, though, that Mr. is quite happy to, sort of kiss his male friend on the lips in public. I mean, okay, I know he thought Peterson was dead and he would never see him again, so there is that element to it. But even so.
Yeah, and I think while we're on the conversation of kind of alternate ships, where it is worth flagging up, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that it's a real shame that we didn't get Robert Bathurst back in this episode as Todd Hunter for even a cameo.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to be the the Todd Hunter fanatic, but I mean, it is such. It really
I'll be it. I have no shame.
I mean, it really is a shame because I mean, they brought back Hollister, Kochansky, and Peterson. I mean, it's such a shame that they couldn't have got Todd Hunter as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there just wasn't time, or maybe he was busy. But yeah, it would have been nice to see him pop round again. And
it would, I mean, God, I guess. I mean, I'm kind of glad this didn't happen in some ways, but I mean, imagine if it had been Todd Hunter who sort of decided to drop in on Rimmer whilst wearing a fancy dress costume and got kicked in the balls.
Yes, I was thinking the exact same thing actually. That maybe Hollister sent Todd Hunter as like a to offer an olive branch, but that it could have backfired spectacularly. But...
oh God! Oh dear! I kind of want to. I kind of want to write that now.
Yes, that's definitely we could definitely make a fic out of that, I think.
I shall have to have a think about it, but okay, we'd probably better move on for that because obviously not everybody is into Vic, or at least not into Vic involving Todd Hunter. Right, okay, so let's move on. Oh yeah, this is just a teeny little gripe, but it kind of annoys me. I mean, I know it feels silly to focus on this when there was so much more glaring continuity stuff. But I did notice in the scenes which are set in the past when Lister and Rimmer are both alive, in their bunk room, they still got there was still a poster which says, "Today is the first day of the rest of your death."
Oh, I never noticed that.
I did. I think I only noticed it this time around. I mean, obviously that was put up by hologram Rimmer, or we got the Scutters to put it up. There's no way that a live version of Rimmer would have had that up there. So I mean, you'd think they could have taken that poster down.
I thought you were going to say about the banana, because
the banana, yeah.
The banana doesn't appear until series 2, and yet it's there in the flashbacks.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously the banana is kind of much more kind of glaring. I mean, I think I've noticed the banana in the past. I just happened to notice the poster this time. It's kind of odd that they didn't just quickly rip those off during the scenes which were set in the past.
Yes, no, someone should have got fired for that. Someone emailed Paul Jackson. He'll sort it out.
Oh yeah, I mean, I did have a look at the documentary. The part of the documentary deals with Stasis Leak, and apparently, Chris says that while someone was trying to explain the plot to Paul Jackson, and this was on the night that they were actually due to record it, and his eyes just got wider and wider. In the end, he just said, "Look, forget it. Just get on with it and record it."
And of course, we probably should have mentioned as well. There's like the famous continuity error, isn't there, with the clock in the bathroom?
Oh, of course, yeah.
It says, I think, March 2nd, 2077, but which has been somehow calculated to be the wrong date. If it was 6 weeks before the crew got wiped out.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to be honest, I mean, a lot of the continuity stuff in this episode, I'm so used to, I almost don't notice anymore.
Yeah. I mean, on my little notepad I have, the first note I made was, where did the photograph in Kochansky's quarters come from? It kind of kickstarts the whole episode.
Yeah, and actually, I did notice we get 2 looks at it, and it's actually 2 slightly different photographs.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, in the first one, Lister's kind of smiling as though he's a groom, and in the second one, he's not smiling. It looks more as though he's the best man. It's odd.
That's a very good spy. I didn't notice that.
I think I only noticed it this time. It's just a very slightly different. It's the same pose, but their expressions are slightly different. It's odd.
I kind of like the idea that after they've kind of gone back and got married, that they came back through the Stasis Leak and left the photo there for future Lister to find.
I guess they must have done, mustn't they? Because I mean, nothing else really makes any sense. You know, I mean, because obviously Kochansky before the accident in the regular timeline would not have had that kind of photo in her room because she wasn't married at that time. You know.
Yeah. And obviously, when Lister gets there in Stasis Leak, they've only just got married, so they wouldn't have had time to have put it there before then, if that makes sense.
That is true. Yes.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
The more you think about this episode, the less it makes sense.
But that's why we love it. That's why we love the show, because continuity doesn't matter, and
Yeah,
every episode is every episode is a new
although
a new adventure.
Who write fic, I mean, it can be fun, you know, trying to sort of head canon away the continuity errors.
Yeah, and yeah, there is a kind of charm to it, I think, of that whole thing of, you know, it's rule of funny and don't take it too seriously, and just say every episode is a clean slate and just run with it.
It's true. I mean, of course, it is ultimately a comedy show. You know, I mean, of course, the fact that it's also a sci-fi show means it does have a lot of sort of sci-fi fans who are very into continuity. You know, but I mean, it is also a comedy show. You know, and comedies don't tend to be so bothered about continuity.
I mean, in this case, obviously, the continuity doesn't even, you know, hold up for the internal universe of the episode. But yeah,
it's true. Yeah, I mean, usually they at least, you know, sort of let it make sense in the episode and before waiting for the next episode to contradict it.
Yeah. But as you say, I do love this episode, despite its gaping plot holes that you can.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I do like it. You know, I mean, even though it makes so little sense, I do like it. You know, whereas if with some less good episodes, you know, they're complete continuity nightmares and they're bad. But I mean, this is a good episode, which is a continuity nightmare.
Yeah, and actually, I really love the whole location shoot they do in the hotel. And I don't know if it's just, you know, 80s nostalgia, but for some reason, just that whole bit where they're there at the Ganymede Holiday Inn, I just find, you know, really entertaining, and the fact that it is just so clearly and kind of 1980s Manchester hotel.
It is, yeah. To be fair, they did put in an android hotel attendant of some kind.
Yeah. I think we've kind of had this discussion outside before of this idea that actually at the time when, you know, Lister was joining Red Dwarf, that it was just, there was kind of like an 80s retro revival, and, you know, like at the moment when all the shops are full of 90s stuff, they're just at that particular point in time, obviously with clothes and internal decor, there was obviously just like a big 80s revival going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes sense, you know. I mean, that makes obviously that's a good explanation for why a show set in the future looks so 80s. Although to be fair, it looks a lot less sort of dated 80s than a lot of sort of 80s shows. I mean, the sort of space setting sort of helps it feel a bit less sort of dated in some ways, I think.
Yeah. And I think as well, I just, you know, I really enjoy that scene in the hotel with the two Listers and Kachansky, and sort of older Lister baiting younger Lister.
Yeah, that is really interesting, actually, because yeah, I mean, as there is a very long standing fan theory which I can't take credit for, because I think it originated sometime in the 90s. It might be in the fan club newsletter, it might be at a Dimension Jump, I don't know. I mean, it's been around for a long time. A very plausible theory that the bearded Lister and the moustached Rimmer from the future we meet here are sort of early versions of the corrupt future crew in Out of Time.
Which, of course, raises the question of what happened to Kachansky.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
maybe she left because she didn't like their you know, what they'd become. So maybe much like in this universe, she took a blue midget and went her own way.
That is a very good explanation. You know, I mean, I hope it was that rather than her leaving because Lissa had a horrible accident and became a brain in a jar.
Yeah, maybe they just dropped her jar. Sorry, that was dark.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Oh God, oh gosh, yes. Oh yeah, but yeah, I do also want to talk a little bit about Kachansky here because I mean, obviously um this is actually the only other episode apart from the end where Claire Grogan has lines as the real first Kachansky. You know, because obviously in Sirens she's a hallucination, and in Balance of Power it's Rimmer hijacking her projection. You know, so yeah, and to be honest, I mean, all the lines they give her, they are really unmemorable lines. I mean, really sort of boring lines.
Doesn't get any jokes, does she?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you know, I would love to know, you know, what she was thinking in this timeline, you know, and you know, but I mean, they just gave her zero to work with, you know. I mean, it was almost on the level of poor Hattie in series 5, sort of close the door, open the door kind of dialogue.
Yeah, it's a little bit of Basil exposition, wasn't it?
A little bit of what? Sorry.
Basil exposition, like in Austin Powers.
Exactly, yeah, yeah, and of course, as you no doubt know, in the final scene where all the sort of alternate versions arrive, it's not actually Claire Grogan playing Kochanski.
No, it's the legend that is Donna Di Stefano.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I mean, there are sort of conflicting reports as to why Claire isn't in the last scene. I mean, whether she was, you know, mistakenly sent home early, or as they say in the documentary, apparently she said, well, I can do the recording, the location shooting in the hotel, but I can't do the studio recording, you know. And to be honest, I mean, whatever is true, I mean, I think it's unfair to sort of blame her as they appear to have done, because I mean, surely it's the responsibility of whoever was doing the booking to make sure the actors are booked for the right nights and whatever. I would have thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think we can blame her for any of that. But you know, thank goodness for floppy hats.
Exactly, yeah, and I do wonder actually whether Kochanski originally had maybe one line in the final scene, which once they realised Claire wasn't available, they cut, or whether she never had any dialogue to start with. Because I mean, if she was in the last scene but she didn't have any lines, you can kind of see how it might have been overlooked that she needed to be there. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Although I guess that kind of makes sense with what we were saying earlier, that actually Lister and Kachansky have obviously just come back from the hotel to the ship, so maybe they were coming back in order to put that photograph there.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yes.
Because otherwise, you know,
wonder, you know, why would they? You know, they're on honeymoon. Why would they suddenly come back to the ship? But I mean, maybe future Lister had a second, you know, had a change of heart and thought, well, maybe I was a bit harsh on my earlier self, and maybe I should go back and, you know, put that photo there to give him some kind of help.
yeah. And I can't help but laugh as well at that scene actually in the hotel room, where, you know, Lister's like, "Oh, can I have a kiss from my future bride?" And his other self is like, "Hell no!" And
on your space bike.
and you can't help but wonder if they put that in there just to tease Craig, because they knew how much he wanted to kiss her.
that would be such a Rob and Doug trolling Craig kind of thing to do.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, no.
Yeah, I get to kiss her. No, sorry, you don't. You've got to wait 5 years. Although I suppose, I mean, you know, it does kind of, I mean, the way sort of future bearded Lister acts towards his younger self, you know, kind of a bit obnoxious. It makes it more plausible that he could then have turned into sort of the corrupt version that we encounter in Out of Time.
Yeah, he's a jerk, isn't he?
He is, yeah. You know, it does kind of make sense. You know, I mean, if he and Kochanski have already found the time drive, you know, they've already sort of got used to luxury and started, you know, caring less about what people think and just doing what they like, you know. And of course we do in the final scene we encounter the moustached version of future Rimmer too.
Who's still hanging around.
Yeah.
How long has he been hiding under there?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense actually. Now you come to think of it, why would if a moustached future Rimmer was with Lister and with future Lister and Kachansky when they got married, why wouldn't he have been the best man instead of some random extra?
Yes, it's the questions. The questions.
Yeah, that really doesn't make any sense, does it? I've never. That's another thing about this episode that does make sense. I've never even thought of that one before. The more you think about this episode, the less it makes sense.
Oh dear. But,
right. Well,
I do love that scene at the end where they're all three of them. Three Listers and three Rimmers, and and Kat in there as well, all just arguing with each other.
Yeah. A strange man with large teeth.
And you can kind of understand why present day Rimmer just snaps, can't you?
Yeah, you really can. Poor Rimmer in this episode. He does his sort of past version that trips on mushrooms. He does go through it. That is a lot to go through in a short space of time. No wonder he snaps and loses it.
And of course, to make it worse, present day Lister just sleeps through the whole thing, doesn't he?
Yeah, of course, because otherwise there would just be too much going on. There's already a heck of a lot going on.
I love the idea that as soon as Rimmer starts screaming, everyone just legs it, and then Lister wakes up, and Rimmer's there ranting about doubles and doppelgangers, and he's just like, what?
Yeah, I did actually decide in a Vic I wrote that was what happened. That everyone just sort of got out of there, and then a bewildered Lister just sort of wakes up, and there's Rimmer screaming, and of course he thinks it's because he's still tripping on mushrooms.
Yeah. Oh, poor Rimmer.
Yeah. In this episode, I do have to feel a bit sorry for the version of Rimmer that goes through the mushrooms and etc. Because that is a heck of a lot to go through.
Yeah.
Right. How would you score this episode, both overall and for stashiness?
I actually do really like this episode. And so I think I'm going to give it like a 7, maybe a 7.5. As I say, even despite the plot holes and all the rest of it, it's just a really fun watch. And there's just so much going on, and it's just really enjoyable. In terms of slashiness, I guess, yeah, maybe a 6. There's not an awful lot going on there, but it's there if you want to find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, overall score out of 10. I have also given it a 7.5.
We're so in sync.
We are, aren't we? Yeah. Although, yeah, I did rate it slightly higher for slashiness. I gave it a 7, but that's because I was thinking of the what about me? I'm giving you the best years of my death scene.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That brings us to the end of this episode of Smeg and the Femmes. Thank you to Hologamet for technical help, and also thanks very much, Feline Ranger, for guesting.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay then, I hope you enjoyed listening. If you'd like to give us feedback, you can do so on either Tumblr or on Discord, on the posts where I've linked to this episode. You can also email us at smegandthefemmes@gmail.com. And the next episode we'll be covering will be Queeg. I hope you'll join us then. But for now, goodbye.